Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Vicky's boss, Jason Butler, he's the director of Lauderdale County Correctional Facility, attended the early afternoon funeral with his wife, and he told the Daily Mail, quote, "I think everyone is just tired and numb at this point. I choose to focus on the Vicky I know. She was a good friend and a good colleague for 16 years. The well-attended funeral seemed to contain no reference to the events that ended so dramatically, with Vicky taking her own life as US Marshals closed in a brief high-speed chase. I've actually found some footage of that, and I'll be playing it at the end of this video. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. The contrast couldn't be more stark between the large number of mourners gathered and Vicky's disappearing act for about 11 days, except that the one common thread was that Vicky wasn't there. The refusal to acknowledge the dramatic events preceding the funeral at the funeral also seems to be some sort of mirror into Vicky's world, where, despite being loved by her peers, something was clearly missing in Vicky's life. Something was clearly not acknowledged in terms of Vicky's life as well. What was that? Love, romance, children, adventure, excitement, something to look forward to. So some of you have cottoned on or criticized the word spinster that I've used. Some of you have said that she was a widow. Some of you said that she was previously married. The point is that she was alone at 56 years of age. The point is that she didn't have someone important in her life in her 50s. Although one has to say, actually, she did have someone important in her life to fill that void. The problem was he was a felon facing some serious charges. If in hindsight it may seem there wasn't much glue holding Vicky to her past life, the funeral seems to indicate the opposite, that there was. We also know Vicky was soft-hearted enough to call her mother to check on how her dog was doing, and that was just prior to going on the run in Bonnie and Clyde style.
I talked to her that morning. She called to ask me about the dog because he'd been sick. Called to check on him, just normal like. And then I texted her at 1 o'clock to tell her that I was cooking supper, but she didn't respond.
The fact that Vicky came unstuck from her community isn't, I believe, a sign that her relationship with her community was weak necessarily, but I think that her feelings for the young hulking Casey were so strong. Does that make sense? And so now we go to a Facebook post by Lauderdale County District Attorney's Office, and they posted in the context of Vicky's passing, "Rest in peace, Vicky White. I choose to not judge her on the worst decision she ever made in her life." So even from law enforcement, you kind of get a sense of affection and giving her some credit for being a good person. Then there's also this post from Billy E. Reisner, and I'm just going to read the whole thing because it's really meaningful, moving, and touching. And this is what he writes in terms of his feelings about Vicky, his connection to Vicky. He says, "Those of you that did not have the pleasure of knowing this amazing woman, I don't expect you to understand the hurt we feel. Only thing you know is what you have seen on the news. Take a second to read a little about my life with Vicky White. When I started at the Sheriff's Department, she was a rover sergeant. She volunteered to work anytime you needed her, and boy did she work. She treated everyone with nothing but respect and was so kind. She also would not hesitate to fight you if she needed to. I've seen her go up against big, mean guys that made me nervous to fight, and also seen her sit and pat those same guys on the back when the fight was over and tell them it will all be okay. When I made sergeant, she gave me my chevrons for my collar. Every single morning when I would get off work, I called her and talked from the time I pulled out the parking lot to the time I pulled into my driveway, and she never hesitated to answer and listen. When my babies were born, she was there. When my twins was born and had to stay in Huntsville Hospital, she came and sat with me in the waiting room. When I went through my split up with Christy, she offered me a place to stay. Back in October, when my brother was shot, she called me before I even made it to the hospital. She offered to carry us to Huntsville and to sit with us. She was there for me without me having to ask her to be. When I seen that she was missing and nobody had a clue what had happened, I put my gear on and I offered my time to help hunt for her. After we figured out what had happened, I didn't give up on her. I sent her a text telling her that we really wanted her to just let someone know she was okay. I hope she at least read it, because when she was at her worst, I wanted her to know that I was still here for her. Vicky was like a mom to me, and everyone else she mentored, and I'm going to miss her so bad. Now, I don't want to judge this business of not acknowledging Vicky's past while numb and grieving at her funeral. A few months ago, I lost my best friend, and I could sense how inappropriate it would have been to bring up the trauma there and then of how he died. And yet I think we must try to make an effort, even in our grief, especially in our grief, perhaps privately, perhaps not, for there to be some congruency with reality. That is what is so sorely needed in our personal lives and in the world. Congruence with reality. After all, isn't that why Vicky chose the route she chose? If she was a motherly figure to everyone else, wasn't there something that was missing in her life? She was living a life that she felt was a lie, or at least she wanted to live more fully than she was living. Those around her didn't seem to notice, or if they did, didn't realize the extent of it. Being congruent with reality means that we try to be practical about what's possible and about who we are. It means beginning with the end in mind. And so one has to ask, had Vicky known this would have been the end, that this funeral would have been the end result of 11 days on the lam, would she have done it regardless? If Casey had known this would be the end result, would he have done it regardless? Would you? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.
I don't really know what comes next. I'm just doing my best, even though I'm so stressed out. Everything just feels like a test that I fail, so depressed when I can't seem to get out. But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that I'm inspired by all this shit. Tell me that I can and I won't. That's what guides me the most. Fuck your lies, I'll do what I want. The gas in the middle of the set, never leave. She's so bad that the chick made the brag. The gas in the middle of the set, never leave. She's so bad that the chick made the brag. The gas in the middle of the set, never leave. She's so bad that the chick made the brag. The gas in the middle of the set, never leave. She's so bad that the chick made the brag. I'm inspired by thirst, I'm inspired by worth. I desire your worst, so you can just hide while I work. I ain't tired, you first. I'll write a second, third verse about the lies you go disperse. You never did shit, I know it hurts. Something deep inside won't let me